Welcome to Alt Swift X's ACOK Abridged. We're back on board. We're back strapped in. We're back in the saddle. We're back in black. We're Amy Winehouse. We're riding a train. All the metaphors you can think of. We're rolling with another ACOK Abridged. And I don't understand if you forgot some of the details, because it's been a little while. It's been a little time, and you might be thinking, what's a ACOK Abridged? What's a train? Who's the Clash? What's a king? We're gonna work it out. We're gonna figure this out together. It's gonna be great. Welcome to the chat and the stream, Schwifticles. Let's do this. So this is an Arya chapter. This is the second Arya chapter in the entire ACOK Abridged. And this is sort of a travelogue. This is sort of like a Lonely Planet episode of Game of Thrones. We get to see some sort of well, no, that's not really true at all. But we do get a bit of a sense of a journey, and we do get to see things that we don't get to see in the TV show. One of the preoccupations of this show is comparing the books with the televisual experience, and those things are sometimes different. There's more CGI in the show because they have a bigger budget. George Martin doesn't have a sufficient CGI budget for the sorts of battles that happen in the show. But that's beside the point. The chapter begins with the group traveling from dawn to dusk, past woods and orchids. I could never work out orchids and orchids. I think the orchid's like a fruit tree, and the orchid's like a collective of trees, not necessarily of fruit trees. If someone could clarify that would be great. Because the secret low key purpose of this stream is to get people to Google things for me. What's an orchard and what's an orchid? Anyway, so they're traveling along, and this is Arya escaping from King's Landing with the Night's Watchman. Yoren, that stalwart brother of the Night's Watch, is taking these Night's Watchmen, these new recruits, these gutter rats, these criminals, these ne'er-do-wells, these shit kickers, these brown bowl licking fucking gin alley Carl Tanners, taking them up to the wall to turn them into respectable protectors of the realm. Except we find out from John's perspective that that's not really true at all. Apparently an orchid is a flower. So is that a flower on a tree or just a flower? And how do aphids fit into this? I expect a detailed explainer video on the Swifty Squad YouTube channel soon. Project 70 doesn't want to miss this stream and hopes that his mum is slow on the Skype call. Don't worry, 70. I'll just tell her not to call you just yet. Anyway, so they're traveling the King's Road. They're riding north. They're escaping King's Landing, but they're going the wrong way. They're going against the stream. They're like a bunch of salmon going upriver to do what salmon do upriver. What does salmon do upriver? What if salmon, like, what's on the agenda of a salmon that they, like, it's migratory, isn't it? But why don't they just stay in the place that, why do they leave? I don't understand salmon. Salmon are mysterious. Salmon are one of the most mysterious creatures. Did you know, I was reading a study that found that the deliciousness of an animal is directly proportionate to their mysteriousness, which is why unicorn steak is a delicacy in most corporeal dimensions. That's a known fact. Dogs meanwhile, are disgusting. Because dogs, they're about familiarity. There's nothing mysterious about a dog. Cats are like not bad. If you skin them right and prepare them, they can go down a treat. Chop them up, peel them, put them in a stew, as Sam Gamgee might say. But you know, we wouldn't wanna go off on a tangent. Oh, there's a milk cow. Look. Oh, well, there's a lot of animals. Let's rank them by mysteriousness. No, all right. Well, no. Let's contextualize first. So there's all these. There's people going south. Arya and these folks. Oh, hang on. I'll press a button. All right. Arya and the Night's Watchmen are going north. Everyone else is going south. There's barefoot girls and women with babes and large men and small men, bringing horses and ponies and bringing their possessions. There's a smith with hammers and tongs. There's a merchant. There's naked people. There's people who have nothing. There's people who are carrying all their possessions, like hermit crabs or snails. Or budgerigars, and the reason is these guys are refugees. These guys are refugees because they are escaping the war in the Riverlands and such. Hold on, I'll press some buttons and that might fix the streaming stuttering. Hang on. Well, those buttons might help. Thank you kindly for the donation. Always Blazin 1369. Cheers. I mean, I'm assuming Always Blazin 420 was taken, so you couldn't have that as a username. But 1369 was a good second choice. 1369 was a good year. I got my first marriage in 1369, and though it ended poorly, that marriage started well. So 1369 as a year I remember fondly. But anyway, the refugees are the refugees are going south, and Yoren is going north. And they're carrying all these things. And one of the common folk who's refuging, has a milk cow with a little kid sitting on the milk cow, because that's the closest thing they've got to a means of transportation. They didn't have Uber in this area, and Lyft was just intolerable, so they're riding a milk cow, which has its upsides. I wouldn't knock using a milk cow as a means of transportation, because you can like make a milkshake on the go if you just like reach a cup down around and have a go at that, and you can make milk. You can moo, which is like more polite than honking a horn, I'd say. Wouldn't it be adorable if you could moo instead of honking your horn in your car? It'd be like you could download a voice pack for your car. Like, why does every car horn have to sound the same? Like, you could have like the voice of Morgan Freeman. Like, wouldn't it be great if instead of a car horn, when you pressed the button, it just had the voice of Morgan Freeman going, "Please move aside." I can't do that voice, but I think that would be cool. All right. So anyway, the refugees are going south, and they're fleeing the war in the Riverlands because the Lannisters and whatnot invading and doing some classic Tywin Lannister burning and reaving. So everyone's trying to escape that, but the Watchmen are going north, and many of them are armed. They've got daggers and dirks, scythes and axes, clubs made of wood or carved knobbly staffs, which highlights like the difference between the rich people, the nobility of Westeros, who have like their, gilded Valyrian swords with ruby stone pommels and cup holders on the side of the sword, and a special sheath made out of the skin of an endangered unicorn, like the rich people in especially those bloody Lannisters are so opulent and luxurious with their weaponry as with everything else, and in contrast these peasantry have little better than knobbly sticks, which is the only thing worse than a knobbly stick as a weapon is a non-knobbly stick. and I would know. All right. Second page. So the refugees are going south, and some of these refugees the Night's Watchman convoy. They've got some wagons. They're carrying some supplies to the north. And some of the refugees think, maybe I could do a little bit of thefting. Maybe I could do a little stealerino. Maybe I could burglarize these Night's Watchman guys. But they see that there's 30 Night's Watchman people, and so they're like, I don't. There's no point burglarizing if I'm left with 30 holes in my head, so let's not. And then Arya listens. She has a little Jedi mind ghost of Sirio Farrell, and Sirio's like, yo, Arya, look with your eyes and listen with your ears. And the reason why Sirio says this is because he doesn't want Arya to get confused and try to look with her ears and listen with her eyes, because that doesn't work very well usually. But if you really concentrate, maybe you could get around it. That's I mean, if you believed in yourself. And one of the women who one of the refugees who's running south is a mess. She's hollow eyes and bloody feet, screaming at them from the road, and she's scarecrow thin, which is a stereotype that I object to, because not all scarecrows are thin. Not all scarecrows are down for that heroin chic 90s look. The old condom full of Lego bony look. Not all scarecrows look like that. Scarecrows come in all shapes and sizes. It comes down to the straw stuffing technique. So I just want better representation of strawberries. If the stream quality is really bad, we could try to stop and restart it. Maybe that might be like a hassle, but it might help. I don't know. Maybe if it's still terrible in a bit, then I don't know. Let me know. Anyway, so a merchant also turns up and says, "Yo, I'll buy all your wagons. I'll buy all your gear." And because I mean, you're just gonna lose it if you cart all of that stuff north. It'll just get stolen, or it'll just get thefterized. So what's the point of bringing all that stuff? You're better off if you sell it to me. And Yoren refuses. He turned and spat at the merchant, which is a bit rude. I mean, Yoren's an upstanding gentleman in some respects. He helps Arya when he didn't have to. He helped out Ned when he didn't have to. But he is spitting in the face of this merchant who's offering a not unreasonable deal. So, I mean, and of course, the merchant's also dead fucking right, and so's this scarecrow lady. Like the scarecrow lady says, "Fools, they'll kill you, fools." And the merchant's saying, they'll take what you want if you go up north. Everyone's warning Yoren and the Watchmen that it's a really bad idea to go into the war zone up north because it'll pose danger to them. Yoren ignores them, which is his undoing. Yoren ends up dying. Spoilers. Yoren ends up dying north, so maybe he should have listened to the scarecrow. Honestly, I've never gotten bad advice from a scarecrow. I think scarecrows are pretty reliable generally, because they've seen some shit. Scarecrows listen more than they speak, and as a result, they tend to know what's what. You'd be amazed what you can learn by standing in a field all day. Just listening to the hay sway, man. And, the crows come and whisper little secrets in your ears. Blood Raven can tell you, the secrets of the cosmos when you're standing in a field. The only problem with being a scarecrow is that the pay is shit and there's no dental benefits. David in the chat says that the problem with Yoren is that Yoren puts too much faith into people helping the Night's Watch. I think Yoren is very aware about the decline of the Night's Watch and the fact that people don't want to support the Night's Watch much. And I think he's very bitter about it. I think that's why Yoren is cynical. I think he's lost his faith. That's my impression. But we'll think about that through this chapter. Regan needs a scarecrow because the pigeons eat her peas. You could try Have you tried asking? Pigeons are pretty receptive to polite requests, I find. It might be worth asking. Anyway, so Yoren spits rudely, and then they start noticing the graves. Because these refugees have been dying of wounds and illness and hunger, I suppose. And there's a small mound dug for a dead child by the road. So we are beginning to see the #horrors of war. #horrors of war. And upon the grave of this child, there is a crystal set in the soft earth, which I suppose is part of the Faith of the Seven religion. The Faith of the Seven religion, you'll notice, is very into crystals. The Faith of the Seven is basically the Catholic Church with crystals, which in my opinion is a straight upgrade. So I think we could more bling, actually. Well, no, less bling. Well, no, it depends what you're into. We're not reviewing religions here. That's an entirely different channel. But I think it's interesting that we get to see what a death rite of the Faith of the Seven might look like, using a crystal as a death rite. New Ages, someone says in the chat. Yeah, I mean, maybe the purpose of the crystal, maybe it's not about the Faith of the Seven. Maybe they're just trying to, realign the chakra and get the chi all in focused, getting the right harmonic frequency. Because you don't want to go to the afterlife resonating with the wrong frequency. That's going to be a bad time. Thank you kindly, Ryan, for your donation, who says, how much money would you need to throw at Swift to convince them to do these weekly? That's not really what Swift is about. Donations are cool because it's like busking. It's really cool to sit by the side of the road and have people put coins in your bucket. And it's nice to know that, the time is, but don't worry. We'll do Swift when the stars align, as you might know from the horoscope series. The Swift is subject to astral movements. So that's what determines when Swift happens, I think. Also, a bunch of you asked really nicely. Did you know that Swift people are really just pleasant in when they request things? Most places of the internet, when people want stuff, when people want stuff from a YouTube channel, well, they're usually not very polite about it. The way a lot of people express loving something is with some words that don't sound very loving. But the Ultrift X, you lovely people, you tend to be quite nice about asking for things. So that's good of you. Thank you. Anyway, so another person dies. Praed dies of a cough. And that's, of course, one of the fundamental inequalities in stories, which is that protagonists die of all sorts of things. Murders, suicides, battles, earthquakes, bad deals with demons. But it's only minor characters who die of random coughs. When someone dies of a cough in a movie, it's a protagonist dies of a cough, it's because of some kind of neurotoxin or lung implosion or uber cancer that's for some specific narrative purpose, but not for side characters. Oh, and we have this moment of Arya sleeping under the stars and looking up and feeling like everything's silent, everything's oddly quiet. The world feels like it's holding its breath. Which gives this sense of cosmic tension. We're in a space of quiet before the storm. And that's very much what these tuberculosis, that's what I was thinking, Kelly, yeah. But yeah, you get this sense of tension and the red comet in the sky and all that stuff on Dragonstone. All that stuff on Dragonstone is so foreboding. #. And David in the chat asks, what would a story be about if a protagonist dies of a cough? It would be about the protagonist's heroic journey in the afterlife to overcome the god of coughs. I presume there's one, and facing off with the god of coughs, and just demanding justice for all cough victims, and then having this like philosophical discussion about like the purpose of the cough in forcing us to confront our relationship with our lungs and trying to smoke less. Kelly's making fun of me for mispronouncing tuberculosis. I'll have you know that the pronunciation is subjunctive. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, Giles Rosby is the cough master. Anyway, tangents, tracks, trains. So Arya's looking up at the sky, cosmic tension, this guy Prayed dies, and when this random guy Prayed dies of a cough, his valuables get stripped by the other Night's Watch recruits. His boots go to one person, his dagger goes to another, which can be seen in a negative light, like it's a downer that like he gets picked apart by human carrion before he's even buried, right? It feels like a bit sad for someone to be dissembled like that. But you can see it in a positive light as well. People talk in a positive way about the way all our molecules when we die go back into the universe, and if you want to get hashtag New Age about it, our bones and our skin becomes stardust, or it was probably actually the other way around, isn't it? We're probably mostly become dirt. But in any case, there is a certain sense of magical oneness with the universe in your pieces going into the earth, and I think that also applies to your possessions being looted and going to the people around you, because that in a very human way allows you through your possessions to live on. If someone walks in your boots, then it feels like in a certain way you're still walking. If someone fights with your sword, you're still fighting, ironically killing more people, but that's just humans for you. The universe tries to be alright, I think. Well, it's sort of up and down. Oh, and then when Prayed dies, they give him a little burial and they give him a funeral rite, but they give him a different funeral rite. They're not putting any crystals on Praed's grave. What they do is they sprinkle a handful of acorns on Praed's body so that an oak might grow to mark his place, which is pretty. But it's inconsistent, isn't it? One person's getting crystals, one person's getting acorns. It's fast and loose. Which would you prefer, crystals or acorns? You could have a bit of both. I'd like a crystal oak. If I died, bury me beneath a crystal oak, please. Like those trees in Annihilation. But yes, Ryan, I think this show is basically Game of Thrones drunk history basking. Can you imagine? Can you imagine walking down the street of your home city and seeing just on the corner some impeccably handsome, well-dressed gentleman sitting on an armchair with a hardcover book of Game of Thrones and just rambling about crystal oak trees, and people just popping a little bit of change on the corner as they go by. Can you imagine how wondrous that would be if YouTubers, like, this is what's gonna happen. YouTube's gonna crash, all right? It's gonna happen. YouTube's gonna die. The whole internet's gonna go down. It'll be a gamma ray burst, and so all the YouTubers will suddenly be unemployed. And so what the YouTubers will have to do is to try to support themselves in a more direct YouTubing fashion, but they'll only have one skill that they can apply, and they'll try to continue doing that. So you're going to walk down the street and you're going to see, PewDiePie sitting on a street corner in Sweden or wherever he lives, and he'll be, sitting with his headphones and talking about whatever it is that PewDiePie talks about, and children will come and squee. That's a strange dystopic future, but it's gonna happen. Mark my words. Anyway, so page 3. So they go to a inn. There is an inn that they come across, and Yoren's like, well, I'm feeling like a rich bitch tonight. Yeah, Rachel points out that if all the YouTubers became street buskers, the streets would become loud, which yeah would be not all that great. Anyway, so Yoren decides, all right, let's stay at an inn tonight. Let's get some hot water and a hot meal and a lick of soap, because these are not a group of individuals who bathe very regularly. Arya says that some of the creatures living in her clothes had come all the way from Flea Bottom, and it didn't seem right to drown them. Which is what one of the more sympathetic moments with Arya. Arya does waver between having a profound appreciation for the preciousness of life and going around murdering people willy nilly. So it's interesting to see that juxtaposed. Arvo asks, is there an alt shift meme review channel? Arvo, there are all manner of alt shift channels out there. You just gotta find them, man. It's whatever you can imagine probably exists. You just don't know it, man. Yeah, I don't know. Fetters. That's a weird word. Fetters is a word for like manacles and like for like chains that go around the wrists, and it's like fetters. That's a way to constrain someone. But it's also a funny word, isn't it? Yeah, the alt shift cinematic universe is what it is. But fetters. I would like to know the etymology of the word fetters. And specifically, I'd like to know how it relates to feta cheese, and how it relates to Boba Fett. I'm assuming there's a connection there. What's the deal with fetters? But the fetters are in relation to Jack and Hagar, Biter, and Rorge, who are the three dangerous prisoners in this party. Anyway, so they stop at the inn and they have a chat. And the innkeep gives them a free round of beer on the house because he likes the Night's Watch. And the reason why he likes the Night's Watch is that his brother joined the Night's Watch, and his brother joined the Night's Watch because he was imprisoned for the crime of pinching some pepper. He stole just a little bit of pepper from his liege, Sir Malcolm, and as a result he got imprisoned, which is pretty lame of all the crimes to get locked up for, stealing a pinch of pepper. Maybe he just needed to sneeze. Do you think there's people who, like, get really, like, weirdly into sneezing? Like, sneezing's a satisfying thing, but, like, I'm sure there's probably a subreddit for people who love sneezing, right? Like, who just like, top 10 sneezers, like, they upvote their favorite WebMs of just the best sneezers. So that's probably something that exists. Anyway. So Arya sips cautiously at her beer, and she remembers that one time her father Ned let her have a little cup of beer, and Sansa used to not like the beer because she said, "Oh, I prefer fine wine. I'm Sansa, and I enjoy fine wine. Give me the Hippocras, father. Give me the Arbor Gold. Give it well aged in the Winterfell cellar so that I can feel like a lady." And Arya disagrees. Arya's like, I prefer beer. And that is interesting to me, and I have a theory. I got a hashtag theory because I don't think Arya actually would have naturally liked beer. Because kids don't like beer. Beer's an acquired taste. I'm pretty sure it's a hashtag fact that kids don't like beer at the first taste. It's only through years of persistence and effort that alcohol becomes enjoyable, beer specifically. And my theory is that the reason why Arya thinks she likes beer is because Sansa doesn't. I think that Arya in many ways defines herself in opposition to Sansa and Arya. A lot of siblings do that. And so when Sansa likes wine, I think Arya's like, well, then I don't. I like beer. And also just because Arya loves Ned, and if Arya sees that Ned likes beer, then she likes beer too. So I think it says a lot about Arya's family relationships. Rachel has been shining torches into their friends' eyes for years, thinking it would help them sneeze, and recently found out that it's a weird recessive gene thing. That, I don't understand that at all. Oh, excellent. Cardinal says that the etymology of the word feta is from the Old English feta, from Proto-Germanic fetero, foot. That makes sense. Feta comes from foot. Cool. We've learned something. So I'm presuming then that feta cheese was developed as like a foot stomped style sort of a thing, right? People like grape stomping, right? They make feta by stomping on it. I think that's how it works. Foot cheese, that's correct, Rega. Thank you very much, Stephanie, for the donation. Yeah, cheers, Stephanie. And we have a description of what the conditions are like here in the Riverlands. We're told that there's no going north because half the fields are burnt, and what folks are left are walled up inside their holdfasts. Things are bad already. It's only the very beginning of Book 2, and already things are all grim in Westeros. So I think this highlights how much worse things will be in the future. Because we're many more books in, and there's supposedly 2 more books to come. Things are going to be apocalyptic by the time of Winds, right? Like, things are so bad now. Once the White Walkers come down and winter comes, how can people possibly survive? I wonder if the end game of Game of Thrones is going to involve some kind of, like, explanation or solution to the more sort of logistical problems of, like, yo, how do we feed Westeros when there's no food? Because there's a whole thing about how the war has massively drained everyone's food supplies because all of the people who would normally be farming and harvesting would turn into soldiers. So how no one was there to gather the harvest and people are going to starve. So how are we going to handle this problem? Amy says that this episode is less tangenty. I find that hard to believe. But yeah, look, I don't know. I might not be the right judge. Renly says that White Walkers just want to ease Westeros into a democracy. Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, in the show, the White Walkers seem a little bit more monarchical. What with the spiky-headed, crowned Night King. But that's not true of the books necessarily. So maybe the book walkers are Democrats. I could believe that. Anyway. So they mentioned that the conflicts is between the Tullys of Riverrun and the Lannisters of Casterly Rock. And Yoren's like, well, we don't take sides because we're Night's Watchmen. And Arya's like, well, I take sides because Hoster Tully is my grandpa. He's Kat's father, and Kat is my mother, right, Morty? And so Arya is feeling divided here. She's aligned with the Night's Watchmen who take no part, but she is a Stark who feels aligned to the Tullys. So we have this theme of divided loyalties. The coughing's really not very entertaining. I think maybe the coughing. I mean, you got to affect, but you don't want to. But you know. Anyway, page 4, 5? I can't count. But Arya hears about what's going on politically. So Robb Stark is riding around. She hears that he rides into battle on a wolf. And Yoren calls that fool's talk. But Arya gets to hear about what's happening to her brother Robb. It's not true that Robb rides his direwolf Grey Wind, as far as I recall. Grey Wind suddenly gets big, and Grey Wind does participate in combat in Robb's wars, but I don't believe that he ever actually rides the direwolf, although no doubt he could later on. Stephanie says that Arya is half catfish. It's really hard to understand what's happening in the chat when you can only glance at it occasionally, but don't worry. It's gonna be okay. Oh, yeah, good point, chat. Because Swift just coughed. Swift just coughed. Oh shit, is Swift gonna die of coughing? Yeah, the god of coughs strikes again. Oh man, I have pissed off the wrong god. Oh, this is a nightmare. I'm gonna have to say some well worded prayers tonight to appease the cough god. Oh man. Oh boy. Anyway. So we're talking about Robb Stark, and we're talking about the dire wolves. There's a great pack, hundreds of man-killing wolves led by a she-wolf, a bitch from the seventh hell. And Arya's like, a she-wolf? Could that be Nymeria? So we are told, like, pretty directly, that Nymeria, the dire wolf, is out there, leading a 100-wolf-strong pack. We have this description of Nymeria leading her wolves into a village in a market day with humans everywhere in the middle of the day. And the Nymeria comes in and tears a baby from his mother's arms and presumably eats the baby. Which might be the first time that a wolf has eaten a baby in a story, and we, on readers, have been on the side of the wolf. Isn't that great that we are as readers, we root for the man-eating wolves because it's Nymeria, it's Arya's doggo. Of course we're on their side. Fuck these unnamed characters. So it's kind of hilarious that we root for the wolves. Thank you kindly, Adva, for the donations. She says, thanks for coming back. Thanks for having me back, guys. Tone it down a notch, Wolfie. Rachel says, good advice. Just turn down the decibels, the woofer bells. Just ease down on the baby eating. Anyway, so Robbo, Doggo, man in a green cloak. Arya tries to defend the honor of Nymeria. Arya says wolves don't eat babies. Which, you know, that's definitely foreshadowing that Arya is going to cannibalize an infant at some point in a Faceless Man storyline, but don't worry about that. Yoren says, shut up, Arya, you're meant to be undercover as a boy, just don't say anything. He says that the boy's green sick on beer, which seems like a weird way to say drunk. Why is drunk green sick? You'd think that would be like greening out. That would be quite different, you would think. But anyway, so Yoren kicks Arya out of the inn, and Arya wanders over to Jack and Hagar and Roj and Biter hanging out in their cage. They're very decorated. They've sorted out the feng shui in the cage. They've made themselves at home there. You know, they've put up some drapes. Roj has taken up scrapbooking. Biter is learning to whistle. It sounds a bit weird because of his pointed teeth, but you know it's some real inspiring stuff. No, it's not. It's gross. And Jaqen says, "Hey, come over and chat, Arya. Lovely boy," he says, lampshading the fact that she's actually a girl. And Arya approaches cautiously with one hand on Needle's hilt. And we introduce Jaqen Hagar, and Jaqen is this sort of pretty man with red and white hair, and he speaks in this odd sort of way. A boy could use a friend. He never says I. And it's interesting that Jaqen is described as always smiling, because skulls always smile, don't they? Skulls, when they have no skin on them, they're just this grinning, toothy grin. And I wonder if there's some perhaps deliberate association between death and Jaqen Hagar there. Probably not, but anyway. Thank you kindly, Stephanie, for another donation. You don't have to throw money. It's nice to hear a dingle of change in the cup. But Stephanie says, this is my coffee money gone for the week. Hadass can't donate from Israel. I wanted you to say controversy. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Hadass. And so we have Arya approaching Jaqen Hagar, and Jaqen says, "Oh boy, oh lovely boy, come to me. I need a bath. You need a friend. I'll be your friend. A boy could make a friend." And Arya says, "I have friends." And that's one of the tragedies, that Arya does not have many friends in this story. She does not have many allies. She does not have many people who she can support and be supported by in this story. That's one of the things. She has this heartbreaking line in book book 3, I think, when she's talking about how she tried to make a pack, but everyone left her. Everyone abandoned her. She tried to make friends with Micah, but he got killed by Joffrey. She tried to make friends with Hot Pie and Lomi and Gendry, but they all abandoned her one way or another, and she ends up alone in a cult. And let's be honest, part of the reason why she joined that crazy cult is because she couldn't find community and relationships outside of it. She was alone in the world, and that surely is going to make you more likely to join a cult for a semblance of community, even if it's from literal death worshippers. So the tragedy of Arya never fails to break your heart. And we have a description of Rouge. Rouge has black hair all over his arms and legs and chest and back. He looks like an ape from the Summer Isles. Meanwhile, Biter looks like an immense white lizard, with the stump of a tongue and teeth filed sharp. So they do look like some sort of horrific cartoon characters, Rouge and Biter. And I'm not going to complain about the show toning that down. The show makes all the characters look a lot more normal than they do in the books. Things are pretty wacky in the books. There's a lot of brightly colored enameled armor and helmets shaped like animals. I can understand HBO not wanting to get that wacky, A, for budgetary reasons, but B, they wanted this to be mainstream. They wanted this to be acceptable to people who aren't giant nerds. And so I think it's fair enough that they don't have people walking around with helmets shaped with, like, porcupines and things. And so Jaqen says, well, I didn't choose my companions here in the Black Cells, which is an interesting statement. Did Jaqen choose to be with... Oh, that's a really good point, Nikolai. Not sure how to pronounce your name, but he says that Rouge and Biter are black and white. Rouge is black with hair, Biter is pale like a lizard, black and white. Good point. I never knew that. See, there's always more details in Game of Thrones that you never know. That is cool. So Jaqen H'ghar is hanging out with Rouge and Biter, who are colored black and white because Jaqen comes from the House of Black and White. Cool. There's a reason why those books take so long to write. Cool. Anyway, so Rouge and Biter, but I'd like to know whether Jaqen has like an ongoing prior relationship with Rouge and Biter, because we know that later on at Harrenhal, Rouge and Biter become sort of the thralls of Jaqen H'ghar, like they follow him around and they do what he says. It looks as though Jaqen has some special power over Rouge and Biter, and whether it's just that they're scared of him and they do what he says, or if he has some, or if they're not even human. Are Rouge and Biter even entirely human? Do they have some other thing going on? It's oh yeah, Ben in the chat says that Michael Jackson is a faceless man, because Michael Jackson was both black and white. So yeah, faceless man confirmed. Jesus Christ. Anyway, Stephanie says that's a Preston Jacobs theory. I like that's trickle down economics for you, isn't it? Like that's how the ecosystem works. I mean, it starts with Preston Jacobs delivers. He originates that crispy tinfoil like a pearl in an oyster, and then it sort of, dribbles down, rolls through the Reddits and the Westeros.org, and then there's Alt Shift X, and then there's everybody else. I think that's how the sort of food chain works. I'm not sure what does that. I don't even want to think about that analogy too much, but that's roughly how it works. If that's Preston's thought, cheers, Preston, because that's smart. Anyway, so yeah, Rouge and Biter are still very mysterious, I think, and I don't think we will learn more about them. Gemma says that they might be glamoured up animals. Maybe Biter is literally a lizard, and Rouge is literally an ape, but they've just been, like, trained by Jaqen, like a circus master, to just do what he says, and, like, he's just glamoured them to look like humans. That would be quite a reveal. Counter theory, what if they're actually perfectly human? It's just that Biter is a human who's being warged by a lizard, and Rouge is being warged by an ape. Maybe that's how that works. I'm not sure. in terms of mysteriousness of animals, though, Roj and Biter must be delicious. Next page. All right, we're running out of minutes. We'll be concise, guys. Let's be concise. Okay. So, Jaqen reminds Arya of Sirio. Hashtag Sirio equals Jaqen confirmed. It is curious that Jaqen reminds Sirio, reminds Arya of Sirio, though, isn't it? It might just be the fact that they both speak with an accent from the Free Cities. So maybe that's why Jaqen reminds her of Sirio. And then Biter and Roj threaten Arya. And Roj threatens to rape Arya with a stick, because we can't go a Game of Thrones chapter without some kind of reference to rape. And we get this sort of banter between Arya and these three prisoners. And by the way, can you imagine having, like, Biter has his teeth filed to points. Can you imagine anything? Well, you can, but it would be so unpleasant to have your teeth filed into a point. I don't even want to think about it. It's one of those, like, visceral, like, if I just said that over and over, you'd lose your mind, because the image of your teeth being filed, mein Gott. But anyway. Oh, and Jaqen also says, a man must have some name. He talks about naming Biter, and he says, well, a man must have some name. And of course that sort of connects to the way the Faithless Men works. The Faithless Men emphasizes names a lot, because, like, you need to know the name of someone to kill them. Or is that, am I thinking of, like, Thundercats? Not sure. Anyway. And so Arya gets aggressive with Roj and Roj's threats, and Arya ends up smacking Roj in the face. Which, maybe that's a kind of justice, but maybe that's also Arya letting out some stress and frustration in the form of violence. Is that healthy? Is that not? I don't know. I'm not Freud, or am I? Shit. New theory. Anyway, next page. Jaqen says that Arya has more courage than sense, which is the truest thing that Jaqen ever says. And then Gendry comes up, and Gendry says, "Yo, don't fuck with these scary people. Don't mess with them. Why are you putting yourself in danger? Just chill, girl." And Gendry is called the Bull, by the way, because who wouldn't want to have the coolest nickname? And I was like, they don't scare me. And Gendry says, well, you're stupid, because they scare me, and they're bloody scary. So be scared. That's how scaredness works, mate. And then Arya's like, you want to fight, cunt? She wants to spar with Gendry. And Gendry blinks at Arya, startled. Strands of thick black hair, still wet from the bathhouse, fall across his deep blue eyes. For all those who ship... what do you call it? Do you call it Gendra? Ardry? Ardry. Is that the shipping name of Arya plus Gendry? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so Gendry and Arya decide to spar, but just as they're about to spar, because Arya is just keeping on badgering him to fight her, gold cloaks turn up. It's the Popo. Whoop whoop. The gold cloaks are turning up, and Arya's like, oh shit, the gold cloaks have come for me. They're gonna try and get me, because, Meryn Trant was trying to capture me before. The Lannisters are trying to secure Sansa and Arya for political reasons. And Arya's like, oh shit, they've come for me. And so she goes and hides behind a tall, flowering hedge. I didn't know hedges could flower. I think my hedge knowledge is insufficient. Do hedges flower? Can you have an orchid hedge? Glidus ships Gendpie, which is that's a pretty cutting edge ship, I'd say. Gendry and Hot Pie is something I can get behind. Not literal. Well, anyway. All right. So yeah. Mary says that the thick hair falling across blue eyes sounds like a young adult novel. I think it's true. Some parts of George Martin's writing are stronger than others. It's a mixed bag. And someone else says Leela, I can't really read the Lola, says hedges can only hog, which is, you know, that's that. I mean, that's fun. Anyway, okay, all right, we're getting. Someone says fuck, marry, kill, Jack and Roj and Biter. Oh boy. Yeah, no, that's a problem. Anyway, the gold clerks turn up. They've got red and blue flashing lights strapped to their helmets. It's adorable. And they turn up, and the gold clerk says, "Oi, are you the blokes going to take the black?" And one of them says, "We might be." He cautiously responds. Which I think is great because a lot of these guys are like, you know, petty criminals slash just, you know, poor people who are reluctant to say anything to the popo. They know their rights, and so they don't want to admit to anything. And old Rayson says, I'd rather join the Gold Cloaks than join the Night's Watch, to be honest. I hear it's cold on that wall, which is just a hilarious reminder of, like, the ignorance of the common folk in Game of Thrones. Like, we know a lot, because we are in the POVs of not just one, but dozens of the most privileged people in Westeros. There's a lot of random blokes called Rayson who, you know, it's news to them that the wall is cold. So Christ knows the horror of finding out that, you know, White Walkers are real and the king doesn't care about you. Anyway, so the Gold Cloaks are looking for a certain boy. They have a warrant for a certain boy. And Arya's convinced that it's her. And Arya thinks about running. Arya thinks about just running away from the Gold Cloaks, but she was so tired of running, and she thinks, well, if I could fight, if I was a water dancer, I could go out with Needle and kill all of the Gold Cloaks and never run from anyone ever again. So Arya thinks of violence as a path to freedom and to not having to worry. Although it seems the further Arya goes into violence, the more worries she gets. She's got 99 problems, and Needle is one of them, I think. Violence doesn't, well, it sort of helps her, but it also sort of destroys her. Look, but anyway. So the Gold Cloak draws a sword, and says, here's your law. Law is steel. And then Yoren says, that's no law, just a sword. Happens I got one too. Which is, you know, very #badass. But also a meditation on the meaning of power, and it evokes that riddle that Varys has about you know, who has the power when, you know, the king commands and the mercenary has the sword. Who is really the person who holds the power? And so the Gold Cloak's like, what, Yoren, are you gonna fight all of the Gold Cloaks right now? Really? You think you can handle us? But then all of the 30 random recruits, they go, I'll fight, and then another one says, no, I'll fight, and it's a bit of a I am Spartacus moment. Everyone picks up their pitchforks and their rocks and their sticks and says, we'll fight to make the Gold Cloaks fuck off, which is a surprising amount of loyalty, honestly, from these random Night's Watch recruits, but they try to defend their group. And so Yoren basically intimidates the Gold Cloaks into leaving, is what happens. The Gold Cloaks eventually identify, though, that it's Gendry that they want, not Arya, so that's very confusing to Arya. The reason why the Gold Cloaks want Gendry is that Cersei commanded the deaths of all of Robert's bastards, and Gendry is one of them, which is low-key one of the more appalling and evil acts in the series, probably. Cersei ordering the execution of all these children. So that's fucked up, but, you know, what's new? It's Game of Thrones. And so we hear some colourful language from Yoren. He orders the Gold Cloak to drop that gut cutter meaning sword, and spread your cheeks over that fat little horse and gallop all the way home, like the little piggy. And yeah, there's some confusion in the chat, and yeah, I do believe it's Cersei who orders the deaths of the bastards in the book, but it's Joffrey who does it in the show, which is a different flavor. I think Cersei's definitely less evil in the show. And Joffrey is much more of like an active agent. He's more of a whinging kid. Psychotic whinging kid, but a whinging kid in the books, I think. Anyway, so Gold Cloaks decide to leave because they'd like to keep their bollocks attached. And so they go back. And the Gold Cloaks leave, and then Yoren's like, everyone shut up, this is serious now, because the Gold Cloaks are after us. We've got like 5 stars on our like GTAV star thing, and so we've got to go hide, we've got to go jump in a hay bale like in Assassin's Creed, and we've got to get away from the Popo. And the Gold Cloak, who Yoren forced to drop a sword, Yoren picks up that Popo's sword and hands it to Hot Pie, because he's like, who wants this sword? And Hot Pie says, I want the sword. And so Yoren gives it to Hot Pie, which seems like probably the worst person to give the sword to, but it is convenient for the plot later on. And so Hot Pie gets a sword. And Gendry and Arya are like, why would the Queen want you? Why would the Queen want you? And Arya says, but Gendry, you're nothing but a bastard boy. Why would the Queen want a bastard boy? But then Arya says, or maybe Gendry's only pretending to be a bastard boy. And at that moment, I can't help but think of Jon Snow, who is also, in a way, pretending to be a bastard boy when he is the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms, depending on how you think that particular right works. Thank you kindly, Brandon, for your donation. He says it is as appreciation for the return of the Swift, which is the 3rd longest, most expensive, but perhaps most memorable of the Swift of the Rings trilogy. So thank you, Brandon. Final page. Yoren's like, I don't see why the Queen would want either of you, though of course he does. And, well, he doesn't know about Cersei's order, I suppose, but he knows about Arya's real identity. And Yoren says, if these Gold Cloaks turn up again, you ride like a dragon's on your tail, get out of here, because everyone else doesn't matter to them, so just try and save yourself. And Arya's like, hey, those Gold Cloaks said they're going to kill you. You worried about the whole death thing? And then Yoren's like, welp, mate, if those Gold Cloaks can get my head off my shoulders, he's bloody well welcome to it. Which, you know, seems like a badass, defiant thing to say. But one of the things about hashtag badassery is that it's often suicidal. I mean, the very first chapter of this series, the Game of Thrones prologue, has Waymar Royce standing up to the White Walker in badass fashion and saying, come dance with me then, and fighting a one-on-one duel with a millennia-old demon of ice and death, which is very cool and cold and icy, but it's leading to Waymar's death. And Yoren's foolhardy ride north and his defiance also leads to his death. And Arya's violence and depth into killing stuff also leads to her deterioration in a lot of ways. So, like, the Game of Thrones books shows a lot of consequence to being a defiant, violent badass, in a way that I don't think the show does. In the show, it seems like the more badass a character is, the more they survive. Jon Snow has stood solo in front of a cavalry charge at the Battle of the Bastards. He's fallen into a icy pool beyond the wall, and he's done all manner of suicidally dangerous things, but he's survived every time, except for the time that he didn't. But then he was resurrected. So I think violence should have consequences, and I think the books generally do show that. So anyway, thank you all for participating in the Ultra FTX ACOK Abridged. I hope you enjoyed. There is a podcast. This show, Ultra FTX, is a podcast. There's a link in the top of the description. You can subscribe to Ultra FTX as a podcast in the podcast app of your chosen. There's also, if you want to like follow what's happening with Ultra FTX, you might want to follow on Twitter and turn on notifications on Twitter, because YouTube is notoriously unreliable with notifications. Who knows when YouTube will tell you what's going on? I don't, so maybe getting on Twitter might help. And yeah, there's also some sort of horoscopy going on for those who'd like to know their future. I think that'll probably continue to happen every now and then. and no doubt there will be more ACOK Abridged at some point. Not sure when, not sure how, not sure where, but that's the way these things go. Advar says that in 2 weeks there will be a 1-year anniversary for the Ultrift X group. So yeah, we'll have to do something to commemorate that wonderful occasion. Go and join the Swifty Squad Facebook group if you'd like to hang out with some of those lovely people who are quite possibly the nicest, most pleasant and creative group of internet people this hemisphere of the internet. So thank you all for participating. Have a great week and life and breakfast. Don't forget breakfast. And brush your teeth. So cheers.